Right now, a single company you've probably never interacted with is quietly shaping the price of your home, your retirement savings, the stability of the global economy, and even the decisions made by your government. It isn't a bank, it isn't a country, and you didn't vote for it, but it manages more money than the GDP of most nations, and its technology helps guide decisions on trillions of dollars every single day. This is the rise of BlackRock, one of the most powerful companies in the world that almost no one truly understands. BlackRock began as an idea built on a mistake. In the mid-1980s, a young bond trader named Larry Fink was on top of the financial world. He worked at First Boston and was considered one of Wall Street's brightest rising stars, someone who could see patterns in the bond market that others missed. But in 1986, his desk suffered a loss of around $100 million after a bad bet on interest rates. In the world of finance, a loss like that can end a career for Fink. It became an obsession. He believed the financial system needed a way to measure risk with far more precision, something that could model how portfolios would react to changes in interest rates, credit spreads, and economic shocks before they happened. He wanted a system that could track exposures across thousands of securities and run endless what-if scenarios. That idea became the foundation of BlackRock. BlackRock started in 1988 as a small fixed income investment firm, managing money for a handful of institutional clients. But behind the scenes, Larry Fink and his team were building something much bigger than a bond shop. They were building a risk management platform that would eventually be known as Aladdin over time. Aladdin grew into a powerful internal system that helped BlackRock analyze portfolios, measure risk, and understand how even small changes in markets could ripple through their clients' holdings. As the system improved, so did BlackRock's reputation. The firm attracted clients who cared less about flashy returns and more about stability: pension funds, insurance companies, large institutions, organizations that could not afford to blow up. BlackRock marketed itself as disciplined and data-driven. Instead of making wild speculative bets, it focused on understanding the risk inside massive portfolios and managing them cautiously. By the early 2000s, BlackRock had become an important player in the asset management world. Then the global financial crisis hit. In 2008 and 2009, major banks failed or nearly failed. Mortgage-backed securities collapsed in value. No one trusted anyone's balance sheet. The US government faced a problem and needed to understand the real value of toxic assets sitting inside failing institutions, and it needed help managing them. BlackRock was one of the firms it turned to. Through the various contracts, BlackRock was hired to help the Federal Reserve and other government entities analyze and manage troubled portfolios tied to Bear Stearns, AIG, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. BlackRock was not the only firm involved in the rescue efforts, but it stood out because of its expertise in fixed income and its risk systems. The government needed detailed analytics on complex securities. BlackRock had the tools and the people to provide them. That work marked a turning point. BlackRock was no longer just managing money. It was now helping governments navigate a once-in-a-generation crisis. Around the same time, BlackRock made the deal that would cement its status as the largest asset manager on Earth in 2009. It acquired Barclays Global Investors, including the iShares exchange-traded fund business. Overnight, BlackRock became a giant in index investing. Tens of millions of people who bought simple index funds and ETFs for their retirement accounts now owned products run by BlackRock, often without realizing it. The firm did not personally own all of those underlying stocks and bonds. It managed them on behalf of clients. But in managing those funds, it gained voting power and influence across thousands of companies. Meanwhile, Aladdin was evolving from an internal tool into something much bigger. Other institutions started using it too. Asset managers, banks, insurers, and even some public entities adopted Aladdin's software and services to monitor risk, run stress tests, and manage portfolios. Over the years, Aladdin expanded to cover a huge universe of assets. Public estimates say that it now supports oversight of more than $20 trillion worth of assets worldwide, including money managed by BlackRock and by other firms that license the platform. That is where BlackRock's influence becomes more subtle and more complicated. Aladdin is not a magic button that controls markets, but it is deeply embedded in how many large investors view risk. It aggregates positions, runs scenarios, and helps institutions see how their portfolios might react to changes in interest rates, credit events, or macroeconomic shocks. When enough of the financial world depends on the same system and the same models, that system becomes part of the financial infrastructure. This dependence became visible again in 2020. When the COVID pandemic hit and markets went into free fall, the Federal Reserve launched emergency programs to stabilize the bond market and support credit. Once again, BlackRock was brought in under contract to help design and execute some of the Fed's corporate bond and ETF purchase programs. That meant BlackRock was assisting a central bank that was intervening in markets, where BlackRock itself also managed funds. Critics pointed out the potential conflict of interest. The Fed and BlackRock responded that strict safeguards and firewalls were put in place, and that BlackRock was hired because of its scale, experience, and technology. Whether you accept those safeguards or not, the pattern is clear. When the financial system is under extreme stress, governments tend to call the firms with the deepest tools and the broadest view of markets. BlackRock has both. BlackRock's defenders argue that the firm is often misunderstood. They point out that BlackRock does not sit in a secret control room pulling strings of the global economy. They emphasize that the vast majority of the assets it oversees do not belong to BlackRock itself. They belong to pension funds, institutions, and individual investors. BlackRock manages those assets according to mandates and benchmarks. The firm earns fees for managing the money but does not freely spend or use it. Even so, scale matters. When one company manages around $10 trillion in assets, its decisions carry enormous weight. When it votes on shareholder resolutions and board elections at thousands of companies, its corporate governance choices matter. And when its risk systems are used widely across the industry, its underlying models and assumptions shape how risk is perceived and managed. The concerns around BlackRock usually fall into three categories. The first is concentration. A small group of asset managers, including BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, hold large stakes in many of the same companies through index funds. Some academics and policymakers worry that this reduces competition and concentrates influence. The second is corporate power and politics. Because these firms vote on behalf of many investors, their positions on environmental, social, and governance issues can affect corporate behavior. The third is systemic risk. If many major institutions rely on similar analytics and similar models, there is a fear that they could all react in similar ways during a crisis, amplifying market swings. BlackRock rejects the idea that it is some kind of shadow government or hidden ruler of the world. The company says it is simply doing what clients ask it to do. It builds diversified portfolios, provides risk analytics, and offers investment products that track indexes or pursue specific strategies. From this view, BlackRock is not driving the system, it is responding to it. But reality is not that simple. BlackRock did not set out to become a symbol of financial power. It became one because modern finance rewards scale, data, and technology. As more money flowed into low-cost index funds, BlackRock grew. As portfolios became more complex, more institutions sought out Aladdin's analytics. As governments faced crises, they turned to firms that could see the big picture. Over time, BlackRock became a central node in the network. The real question is not whether BlackRock is secretly evil or secretly benevolent. The real question is what it means for the global financial system when a single private company becomes so deeply embedded in its wiring. What happens if too much risk analysis runs through the same models? What happens when a firm that manages other people's money also helps governments respond to crises in markets it participates in? What happens when a company most people have never heard of becomes hard to replace? BlackRock is not a comic book villain and it is not a savior. It is a product of the world we built. A world where markets are too complex for human intuition alone. A world where algorithms scan portfolios faster than any team of analysts ever could. A world where size and scale create both efficiency and fragility. Whether that world proves resilient or vulnerable is something we will only discover in the next major crisis.